Hi, my name is Francois de Wet, and today we're looking at the third part of the Into the Eye of the Storm. And this one is basically coming out of the storm, what we can expect, and more detail about what the storm really is about. Now, over the years, I've had many visions, spanning over a period of 40 years, starting in 1977, and I must say I have never in my life had a vision with so much detail. Now, the way that God works with me is He'll show me a vision repeatedly, and until I sort of really take note of it and I write it down, and that's normally how I know when something really is God or if it's just my own imagination or anything like that. Now, this vision I've had with a clarity unlike any other visions that I've had. The last time I had a vision with this clarity was in 1978, when I saw the whole trial and crucifixion of Jesus in every graphic detail. Now, in this one, what God has done is He's repeatedly shown me different aspects of this vision. In other words, every component of this vision is important. And God is slowly but surely showing me each little part, what it means and what the forecast is for South Africa regarding this. Now, if you haven't watched the other two videos, then please watch them first so that you can get the context of this video. So the first one is the end of the ANC, Into the Eye of the Storm part 1, and then obviously part 2. And this is now technically part 3, but this is coming out of the storm and what's going to happen. Now, the ship I initially thought was South Africa, and the ship is the political system in South Africa, and the passengers on the ship are the people of South Africa, different nationalities, tribal groups, etc., etc. And the captain and the crew of the ship is obviously the ANC, along with the other politicians that are driving the ship, and I would say driving this whole political system and determining the future of South Africa and the direction that we're going as South Africa. Now, the compass that was lost obviously means that they've lost direction. They have no idea. And I think there's a meaning in it as well, because I believe the only true compass that there is in life is God Himself through Jesus by the Holy Spirit. Now, in this vision, I saw that they had no idea which way to go, and that of the crew came to the captain and actually advised him. So it wasn't the captain's own idea. He was influenced of the crew, in other words, of the other politicians. And they pointed him in a direction, and this direction, according to them, there would be a lot of money that would be created, etc., etc. So the whole thing was all for profit, for finances, and not really in the best interest of the ship, nor the crew, nor the passengers of the ship. And so the decisions that are made is not in the best interest of South Africa. Now, as the ship was pulled, in other words, there were two things that were pulling it, but one major one that was pulling the ship into the eye of the storm. The one was the whole thing of expropriation of land without compensation, and the other one was nationalizing of things like the Reserve Bank, etc., etc. And that these were the two things that were determining the direction in which the ship was sailing. And so this ship changed direction, and it went straight into a storm, and you can get the detail of the storm in the other videos. But it went into the eye of the storm. In the eye of the storm, we basically, as a nation, faced major recession, job losses, huge job losses. God has shown me this repeatedly in almost every sector of South African society. The unemployment literally doubling in a matter of a year, maximum 2 years, and things really becoming very bad in this area economically in South Africa. Now, when the ship was in the storm, in the eye of the storm, it was being tossed left and right. The waves were just moving it which speaks of the two political extremes in South Africa. On the one side, the left; on the other side, the right. and this tug of war that was going on politically in South Africa. And in the storm, it wasn't helping. In the storm, it actually made the storm worse because the ship was just not getting direction. The sails of the ship were totally torn by the storm. The ship, once it was in the eye of the storm, it was no longer moving because the sails were torn and everything. A ship has to move for the rudder to work, and the ship was entirely at the mercy of the storm. And God, at the time, the first time he showed me this vision, he said to me, the captain of this ship is now the storm. So in other words, that basically the storm was now steering which way South Africa was going, and the politicians had lost all control, including the captain of the ship had lost control. That the recession and the job losses and everything was now basically determining the outcome of the storm and where we were headed. Eventually, the ship came out of the storm, out of the eye of the storm, and it was leaning over to the left a lot. In other words, it was basically like probably about 30 degrees to the left, and it couldn't sail. And the ship was just leaning over. As it was leaning over to the left, it was just taking in water. If you remember, in that vision, I said that the ship already had holes in it. So this ship was actually, this political system was not in a good place. In other words, it already had been looted. It had done all kinds of things to South Africa as a nation, and it wasn't looking good. And then, once the ship came out, the ship was without a captain, and most of the crew were missing. So now we had a ship coming out of the storm, leaning to the left completely, with no captain and only a few crew members left. And then there was the storm cleared. It stopped raining, the thunder stopped and everything, and there was a silence for a little while. There was like a pause. I'm not 100% sure what that pause means. Normally in a vision like this, that would mean a time that passes. In other words, almost like a thing where nobody knows what to do. The next moment, I saw the light shining onto the ocean right in front of the ship. And initially it was just a beam of light shining down, and that you couldn't make out any detail in that. It was the only thing that could be seen. Everything else was pitch dark. And then the ship actually began to move from the current. There was a current underneath the ship that was pulling it towards this beam of light that was ahead of the ship. And you couldn't see the current, nothing like that. You could just feel it. In other words, you could feel the ship was actually moving, and you could see that it was actually approaching this light. As it moved towards the light opened up, and it actually became like a slither of light that was shining onto the water in like a line. And this slither of light became wider and longer until it was all the way from the ship to the island. And it was literally made a pathway to the island, and the current was drawing the ship in this pathway of light. The ship was being pulled underneath. Now, this current speaks of influence. It speaks of people that underneath, that are basically pulling the ship along, an influence pulling it along. The light from above, I think, speaks for itself, and it was illumination from God, and with the current underneath. So it was working from two places. On the one side, from God above. On the other side, a people from underneath, a current, which speaks to me of a move towards something. Once the ship got to the island, the ship it basically got stuck in the sand right on the beach. It berthed on the beach, and the ship then it was just lying on its side, and people jumped off and ran towards the island, and that relieved to be on dry land again. And the ship lay on its side. And at the time when I first had this vision, the first few times, every time I looked at the ship, I thought to myself, it's going to take a long time to fix this ship, because this ship it looked like a wreck. That's it. But I saw nobody come towards the ship. Every time I had the vision, the ship just lay there, and the people were now on the island. And the island was really beautiful. The island had resources, it had water, it had trees, it had everything, but it was brand new. In other words, there was nothing on the island that didn't need to be processed and worked. In other words, it was going to take work to do it, but everything was there to build a community on this island. And the island speaks of a whole new political system. And the ship lying there, remember now, the ship is the current political system that was under the captaincy and of the ANC, as well as the crew and some of the other political parties, and that had basically collapsed. In other words, the whole system had entirely collapsed, and the ship was lying there. And as I looked down, I saw the wood of the ship. And the wood was rotten. It was absolutely rotten, and I thought to myself, this ship would have basically fallen apart at any stage. The fact that it actually got through the storm is an absolute miracle because it was so rotten, which speaks to me of just the corruption and how deep the corruption goes, not only in the ANC but in many of the political parties. The whole political system in South Africa is corrupt, okay? And the ship was, I realized that this ship was beyond repair. It could never sail again. It was finished. And that the island was the future. There was no turning back. The ship was not able to go anywhere. And we were there. The island was the answer. And the island speaks of a whole new way of governance, and God has shown me extensively about this. On this island, or the island, there's going to be a political system. In the future of South Africa, there's a political system that is going to be equal. It's going to work on a governance that's going to be very strange, in the sense that every grouping will have exactly the same representation. And a proposal is going to be put forward at a point for this form of governance, and it's going to be widely accepted by South Africa, because South Africa at that point of time is going to be in a place where there is no alternative. In other words, the whole political system has totally failed, and even if people try to even put forward anything political in that, it's not going to work. And this new form of governance basically made it that from the biggest group to the smallest group in South Africa would have exactly the same say. This form of governance would enable self-governance by the different groupings, as well as a co-governance by all the different groups as far as the national governance of South Africa goes. It will also have a high level of accountability. It will be re-elected. The people that serve on this will regularly, and if people do not do their job, they will be fired and new people appointed. So the whole system is really going to be something else. It's going to be amazing. But now here's the incredible thing is the island represents this new governmental era. It's not a political era. It's a governmental era in South Africa. And that is going to lure something. Because as I stood on this ship, I was looking down at this rotten ship, and I looked towards the ocean, and I saw on the horizon, I saw specks right across. And they were getting bigger and bigger. And as I kept watching in this vision, they were ships and boats and anything that could float. There were people in little dinghies rowing. There were people in sailing boats. There were people in motorboats and that. Later on in the vision, I saw bigger ships arriving. There was a lady that was in like a skottel, that you use for a kneading trough or whatever, and those big flat ones. And she was rowing with one oar like that. And in it, she had baking supplies. And obviously I gathered that she's a baker. And as people came to the shore, I realized they'd all brought supplies and tools, and that people had all kinds of skill sets and qualifications and everything that they were bringing to South Africa to rebuild South Africa, but they were drawn by the island. In other words, they were drawn by this political system, because this political system would mean equal opportunity for everybody. It would mean that everybody can work together to build something. Quite amazing what I saw, and I will hopefully be sharing more in future about this. At this stage, I feel that God is restricting me to give too much information about this form of governance. But anyhow, these people arrived, and they arrived to build. They arrived to settle down, and they came and worked over here, and everything changed. Our whole community changed. Houses went up, factories went up. In other words, the community was thriving. Employment was created. There was all these things. There was a tremendous entrepreneurial thing in it. One of the things that God has shown me very clearly is that whatever is nationalized will be privatized. Privatization and the what do you call it, private sector is going to be the future of South Africa. We're going to see tremendous changes in this area, and free enterprise is going to be the order of the day, and it's really going to cause our community to flourish and to do well. Okay, now I don't know a time factor. In other words, people always want to know, okay, when's this going to happen? I don't know. I'm not sure how long the storm's going to last. I know the storm's going to be very severe. I know that people are going to turn, that part of the storm is going to be where people turn against the ANC, and a massive uprising, just like we saw with the National Party prior to the 1994 elections. We're going to see a turn against the ANC that's going to seem sudden, but it will have been something that's been brewing underneath for a very, very long time. And so the ANC has really committed, or is in the process of committing political suicide. In fact, the whole political system is in a process of committing political suicide. Okay, now this new system or this new government that we're going to see is going to spread upwards. In other words, there were other visions that God showed me, and I saw South Africa flourishing. I saw South Africa doing well, and it moving up into Africa. And so the same thing happened up in Africa, because I'm going to be sharing more. God showed me what's going to happen in Africa as well. And Africa is headed for its own storm. Africa is also, and it's going to be a bounce-on effect from South Africa, but very similar things are going to happen up in Africa. And Africa, I saw drought, I saw plagues, you name it, I saw hitting Africa on a scale that is going to leave Africa reeling. And I saw Africa being rebuilt. In other words, I saw the same thing. I saw people coming from everywhere, bringing skills and bringing all kinds of qualifications and bringing stuff with them. In other words, to provide and to do all kind of stuff. And Africa being rebuilt. And I couldn't help thinking about somebody somewhere along the line. There's a word that has been shared repeatedly, and that is that Africa will become the breadbasket of the world. And I remember hearing that word the first time, and I thought to myself, Africa cannot even look after Africa. So how's Africa going to become the breadbasket of the world? And now it makes a lot of sense. In other words, Africa is going to be worked. Africa is going to flourish. And it's going to be due to this influx of people coming to Africa and working and building to build a better society and for everybody. Okay, so that's sort of in a nutshell. If I remember more things, I will share it. But, in essence, what I want to tell you is that God is in this thing. In other words, God is allowing the ANC to basically self-destruct. God is allowing our political system to self-destruct. And so that God can take us into a complete new form of governance where righteousness will flourish, where people will do well, and obviously nothing is perfect. In other words, we're people, and so humanity will always have some aspect unrighteousness in them. But the general thing that I saw for South Africa it was very, very, very encouraging, very promising, and actually pretty amazing what I saw. And as believers, we're going to play a major role as that undercurrent that is literally led by God is going to steer things in a specific direction. God is going to give illumination from the top to show the way and to show how this new governance must be set up, and it is going to work. I know it is definitely going to work. Anyhow, that is about all I can share now. May God bless you.